Good day, everyone. We are the Group 2, and our assigned topic is about security systems, international terrorism. But before we proceed to the case discussion, let us first play our video presentation in relation to our topic.
Hijacked planes, car bombs and explosive belts, vehicles used as weapons, mass shootings. It's almost impossible to turn on the news without hearing about terrorism. Yet despite its prevalence, terrorism can be difficult to define. Terrorist threats come from formal groups and from individuals. People can be directed by an authority to commit terrorism, or simply inspired by a group's rhetoric or a charismatic leader. Governments can be involved in terrorism by actively providing sanctuary or resources to terrorist groups, or by an inability to prevent groups from using their territory or resources. And while terrorism shares some characteristics of crime and traditional warfare, it does not fit squarely in either category. To further confuse things, people sometimes disagree on whether an act is in fact terrorism based on whether they support or oppose the perpetrator's cause. Regardless of its many interpretations, terrorism can be defined. It is the intentional use of violence by non-state actors against civilians in pursuit of political or ideological objectives. Many terrorists are motivated by the belief that their government fails to treat their ethnic or other group fairly. They may disagree strongly with a specific government policy, or they may follow political and religious teachings that view certain people or countries as enemies. Throughout history, terrorist groups have committed violent acts to advance their agenda. Examples stretch back centuries, from the dagger-bearing Sicarii, who employed terrorism against ancient Roman rulers, to the Black Hand-abetted terrorists responsible for the 1914 assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. More modern examples include the Provisional IRA, who sought to remove Northern Ireland from the United Kingdom and join it with the Republic of Ireland through armed force, and Hamas, which uses rocket attacks and other violence in its campaign against Israel. The majority of recent terrorist attacks are attributed to individuals and groups acting in the name of their vision of Islam. These include Al-Qaeda and its offshoots, as well as the self-proclaimed Islamic State, or ISIS. There is debate about whether religious, economic, political, and environmental conditions in many Muslim-majority countries have contributed to this wave. Due to the conflict in Syria, the rise of ISIS, and the increased activity of Boko Haram in Nigeria, terrorism-related deaths skyrocketed starting in 2012 after decades of fluctuation. In 2014, for example, more than 43,000 people around the world died in terrorist incidents, almost 3/4 of them in just 5 countries. That year, 13,000 deaths occurred in Iraq, compared to only 19 in the United States. So what is being done to combat terrorism? Terrorist operations require money. This can come from state sponsors, crime, private wealth, even the sale of oil and other business activities. Thus, one counterterrorism approach is to limit the funding of terrorist groups. Discouraging the recruitment of new terrorists is another goal of counterterrorism efforts. In particular, attacks by lone wolf terrorists, or individuals who are unaffiliated with an organized terrorist group but become radicalized online, are an area of growing concern, in part because they are so difficult to prevent. Internet access and social media help terrorist groups organize, inspire, and recruit, but the sheer volume of information online makes it difficult for law enforcement officials to track and combat the narratives and activities of these groups. Other counterterrorism tools include identifying and arresting those plotting attacks, and military and covert action against terrorists. The ways in which the United States and other countries approach counterterrorism are sometimes controversial. Increased surveillance generates debate about the infringement of personal liberties, and drone strikes often generate criticism for killing or injuring people with no connection to terrorism. Despite these extensive efforts, the truth is that it's impossible to eliminate terrorism. There will always be individuals and groups ready to commit terrorist acts. The challenge for governments is to reduce the threat posed by terrorism in ways that promote the safety and economic well-being of their citizens, while minimizing any disruption to their lives.
Okay, so that is our video presentation related to the topic security systems, international terrorism. And now let us proceed to the introduction. So, international terrorism refers to terrorism that goes beyond national boundaries in terms of the methods used, the people that are targeted, or the places from which the terrorists operate. It is also a violent criminal acts committed by individuals and or groups who are inspired by or associated with designated foreign terrorist organizations or nations. So, terrorism today is fast becoming a global phenomenon, and terrorism creates terror, feeling of insecurity, and it also affects our global economy. So, as we've conducted a lot of research, a lot of study about this case, we've came up with these variables that affects or can be affected by international terrorism.
So now let's go to the variables of the case study. So first is traits, violence, discrimination, inequality, religion belief, group identity, ethnicity, illiteracy, education, democracy, state, peer pressure, recruitment, political, sponsorship, funds, charities, equality, justice, peace, terrorism, modern technology, law enforcement, victims, and human rights.
So now, here is the definition of the variables. Religion beliefs is an acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists. The belief in and worship of a superhuman, controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. Inequality refers to the phenomenon of unequal and or unjust distribution of resources and opportunities among members of a given society. Discrimination, the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people or things, especially on the grounds of race, age, or sex. Threats, a statement of an intention to inflict pain, injury, damage, or other hostile action on someone in retribution for something done or not done. Terrori- Terrorism, the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians in the pursuit of political aims.
Good day everyone. So we have another definition of variables. Peer pressure, influence from members of one's peer group. Violence, behavior involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, or kill someone or something. Political, relating to the government or the public affairs of a country. Illiteracy, lack of knowledge in a particular subject, ignorance. Charities, an organization set up to provide help and raise money for those in need. Funds, a sum of money saved or made available for a particular purpose. Recruitment, the action of enlisting new people in the armed forces, finding new people to join an organization or support a cause. Sponsorship, the position or function of a person or group who vouches for, supports, advise, or help fund another or an organization or project.
So by defining human rights, it is the standards that recognize and protect the dignity of all human beings. So law enforcement is defined the activity of some members of government who act in organized manner to enforce the law by discovering, deterring, rehabilitating, or punishing people who violate the rules and norms governing that society. And the victim is defined a person harmed, injured, or killed as a result of a crime, accident, or other event or action. So, a state is defined as a nation or a territory considered as an organized political community under one government. And democracy is a system of government by the whole population or all the eligible members of a state, typically through elected representatives.
So, peace, a state or period in which there is no war or a war has ended. So, group of identity, the image of group held by its members or by those external to the group. Ethnicity, the fact or state belonging to a social group that has a common national or cultural tradition. Education, the process of receiving or giving systematic instruction, especially at a school or university. Equality, the state of being equal, especially in status, rights, and opportunities. Justice, a judge or a magistrate in particular, or a judge of the Supreme Court of a country or state. A modern technology, it is the advancement of old technology with new additions and modifications.
So next, here is the measurements of the variables. Threats, number of cases. Violence, number of cases. Discrimination, number of people. Inequality, number of cases. Religion beliefs, number of people. Group identity, number of people. Ethnicity, number of people. Illiteracy, number of people. Education, number of people. Democracy, number of no. Democracy is area, state, area, peer pressure, number of people.
So, measurements or the ways how to measure the variables. So, in political, the number of people, recruitment, number of people, sponsorship, number of people, funds, piso, charities, rate, equality, area, and number of people, justice, area, and number of people, peace, area, and number of people, terrorism, number of cases, modern technology, rate, law enforcement, rate, victims, number of cases, human rights, number of cases. And that's the way how to measure the variables.
So our first relationship would start with a group identity or ethnicity, since a kind of terrorism comes from a groups or individuals. For example, in Islam, so from that group, there will be a positive belief such as a religion beliefs. And because of that group ethnicity, there will be a possibility that there will be a larger number of peer pressure that will lead to a lesser democracy. So, from the group identity or ethnicity, there will be a lesser democracy or not a democratic country or community. From a lesser democracy, there will be also a lesser equality, or let's just say a large number of inequality. So from that, there will also a large number of injustice that will result to a large number of violence that will cause a lesser number of human rights. So from lesser equality or large number of inequality, there will also a more discrimination happen, and of course there will also a more victims occur. Our second relationship will be modern technology. So through technology, it is making easier for them, the terrorist group, to spread propaganda across international or more state or nation and recruit online. So through the use of technology, there will be more recruitment, and then there will be possibilities, there will be more sponsorship they will have, and more charities to have larger funds to their group for such an act. So if there will be more sponsorship, there will be a positive political objection. Any government authorities can be involved in such terrorism by actively providing resources and support by the group. So with that, there will be a lesser law of enforcement occur.
So now let us proceed to the reinforcing or the problem. So the main problem or cause of terrorism is illiteracy. So if a person are illiterate, kung wala siya kahibalo about that, maybe sa environment, maybe about sa religious thing, and so on. So kanang nga tawo dali na kaayo siya nga ma-persuade sa mga terrorists to join their group and of course to commit a crime. And if that will happen, of course, ni-increase diri ang injustice. Kay that crime will remain injustice because the people that kanang gabuhat ana is they are kanang illiterate pod ba, and wala sila kahibalo about sa law, sa mga government rules bitaw. And sometimes people get offended and hurt by the justice system, and mo pa na siya sa ka-factor ngano nga um, nag-evolve ang injustice. And of course, if na injustice, mo-increase sad ang violence. Kay some people they resort to act violence in order to protest the ongoing injustice. So kumbaga mao ni ilang nga way para mapansin sila, or mao ni ilang way para makuha nilang attention sa mga tao, or maybe sa mga tao nga nasa government, for them para makuha nila ang justice. But then again, sadly manggod, mao pod ni siya factor ngano nga mo-increase ang terrorism. Kay if daghang violence, of course, ang daghan ng mga crimes ang mahitabo, maggubot na, no? So muna siya mo-increase sad ang terrorism. And if mo-increase ang terrorism, of course, so mobalik lang ni siya diha sa illiteracy. Kay if a person are kanang na-join na siya sa, or usa na siya sa mga terrorists, of course wala na siya time to study, to have their education. So magbalik-balik lang ni sila if kanang walay solution sa terrorism. So that's it.
So now let's proceed to our balancing loop, which is the solution for this case, to start with education. Because if that person is uneducated, he or she will know the reality happened in their community. So if that person is now educated, there will be lesser brainwash. So there will be more literacy. Because a person is already educated and knew everything, then there will be a positive justice happen. So if there will be justice, then there will be equality and peace. If that community is now peaceful, then there will be a negative threats or violence and a negative terrorism act.
So let us proceed to the recommendation. So education is the primary solution of tourism. The government should educate the people to understand the differences in culture, religion, belief, and human behavior. So all people should think of the peace, freedom, and equality of all human beings, not just by their group of people. So as citizen, it is important for us people to protect ourselves both online and in person, and to report any suspicious activity we encounter. We can help reduce the chance of a terrorist attack by keeping an eye out for suspicious situations, such as unattended suitcase or someone with a conspicuous level of interest in the security of a building. We must remain aware of our surroundings and refrain from oversharing personal information, especially sa atong mga social media.
The solution cannot only rely on individual to ease the act of terrorism. There will be law of enforcement to military force, defense department provide the defense of our country from all attacks that originated from abroad, and the Department of Homeland Security that aims to protect and prepare for acts of terrorism to have a peaceful and a democratic country.